right now, online, there's a massive trust deficit. Everyone's BS radars are so finely tuned now. We need so much longer to build trust. And I think community is really where it's at. In this AI driven world, in a world that moves so fast, it's this community that is going to make us stand out.
In a community, you're there leading the community, yes, but they're all talking to each other and they're all vibing with each other and sharing details with each other, and you're still the person who is actually leading that. It's being with people rather than talking at people. And I find that so much marketing these days is talking at someone rather than trying to include them in the conversation or to hear what they're saying.
Welcome to today's episode of the Business Growth Lab. I'm your host, Samantha Riley, and I've got Jenn Donovan along to chat to us today. Jenn is a specialist in social media and marketing, but we've just had a 10-minute conversation, and I think we've touched on just about every topic that's being had in Australia right now. We could go down any rabbit hole. So, Jenn, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, your audience, they might need to strap in for this conversation. Goodness knows where it might land, but promise it will be really worth listening to. But yeah, it's an honor to be here and to chat to yourself and to your listener as well.
Let's start off with community building, because I think this is something that you and I vibed on like quite a lot in our little conversation in the green room, because I think that right now online there's a massive trust deficit. People, they've heard all the marketing, they've heard all the slick oil salesmen that have been around, and I think everyone's BS radars are so finely tuned now, and we need so much longer to build trust. You mentioned community building, and I think community is really where it's at. It's like in this AI driven world, in a world that moves so fast, it's this community that is going to make us stand out. So from a marketing perspective, how would you describe community building?
Yeah, I suppose community building is when I do a lot of speaking as a keynote speaker, and when I'm on stage, I'm talking at people. Like people are there to hear me speak. But in a community, you're there leading the community, yes, but they're all talking to each other and they're all vibing with each other and sharing details with each other, and but you're still the person who is actually leading that, because someone needs to lead a community for sure, but it's being with people rather than talking at people. And I find that so much marketing these days is talking at someone rather than trying to include them in the conversation or to hear what they're saying, or John meets Sam and meet Paula, and you would make a really good team together, or you're talking about the same sort of thing. And I think, it's more or less like putting a bit of a picket fence, a virtual picket fence around your people, and having them think of you as the person who is the expert of what they want, but also understanding that, they've got all these other people in your community that they can be friends with, and they have or nearly automatic trust with people because they're
Mhm.
in your community. And so like, well, this person must be a good person because, they're in your community. It's a little bit like, I don't know about you, Sam, but I've had probably 7 years of podcasting, and I think I've had 2 people I've interviewed and I've never put them live, because for me, it's like I'm saying to my community, my podcast community, I trust this person.
Mhm.
These would be a good person to work with. And after interviewing them, one in particular that sticks in my mind was like, I don't actually think you know what you're talking about. I don't
Yeah.
actually think that you are the business. You might be the business owner, but I don't think you're the person who does what you say you're doing. And therefore, I didn't feel that I could put that out into the world and have people think that I trusted that
Mhm.
person or that I was recommending that person. So community is kind of, yeah, it's a really quick way of building trust. And it's also a really good way of leading people rather than just talking at people.
Yeah. And you were talking about that trust there. It's a transference of trust. It's like, oh, well, I know Jenn really, really well. So if you introduce me to someone else, I would automatically trust them. Like it transfers very, very quickly. I had a coach once say it's like kings hang with kings, obviously.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, and it's just that idea of tend to hang out with people that are like us, that have the same, not exactly the same values, but our values all sort of they resonate in the same way. We're not going to hang out with someone where the values are completely different. And yes, I've got a little folder like you where some podcast episodes end up for that exact reason and every single one of them was actually a values misalignment and not necessarily even an information misalignment
Mhm.
because, and that's what you're talking about there. It's
Yes. Yes.
values are so important.
And I just feel like I'm still hearing from small business owners that I do a lot of coaching and mentoring with, that they're still like, I've only got 600 followers on Instagram, or I'm struggling to get people to follow me on TikTok or connections on LinkedIn. And it's like, but it's not actually what it's about. It's
Yeah.
about, who's in your community and who do you want in your community, and going out and maybe seeking them, or going into other people's communities and building that trust there, what that looks like. I think we are quite some distance away from worrying about how many followers we have on Instagram, because you know, reels have and video has kind of ruined everything. Now we just kind of scroll past. We barely leave a
Mhm.
comment or a like these days, never alone a follow. So it's about that community. It's about bringing people in to have those conversations, about building that trust with them. So whether that is through an email list and you end emails with hit reply and let me know how you're feeling about this, and you build community that way, or whether it's a Facebook group, or whether it's a live event that you attend, or a Zoom networking event that you put on, or whatever that looks like. But community is the way to go in, an AI fast-paced, oh my goodness, what could possibly come next way? We can trust our communities for sure, and we can trust the expertise in the community.
Yeah. I was about to ask you what sort of communities are there, and you did just rattle off a few things there. Because there's gonna be people listening, and I'm thinking hundreds of people that are listening going, "Oh, that's me. I've only got 200, 600, 800 followers on Instagram," or only use Facebook for my family and, not building relationships." Like, can you sort of speak to some of the amazing communities that you've seen built, or not specific communities, but ways that you've seen people build community?
Yeah, I guess, if I selfishly talk a little bit about a community that I built. So if we head back to 2019, I come from a farm. I live on the border of New South and Victoria, and we were in absolutely horrific drought at that particular time.
Mm.
Being a speaker, I was traveling around southern New South Wales at the time, and it was October, so it was coming up for Christmas. No one was excited about Christmas, because when you live in a regional area, if farmers don't have money, towns don't have money. So if
Mm.
there's no crops, there's no money, the town tends to suffer. And at that particular time, Buy from the Bush was a trending hashtag, but no one really knew how to use Instagram and how to get involved with that. And on the way home from a week away, if anyone knows where Hay is in New South Wales, there's
Oh my
nothing
goodness,
to see.
yes. The Hay Plains where you can drive
Yes,
down the
the
road and
Hay
have
Plains.
kangaroos bouncing with you and looking in the window.
That's exactly where I was. Nothing else to do but sort of think up a bit of a solution. So I got home and I opened a Facebook group, because I'm like, everyone knows how to post on Facebook. And I invited my clients, and I invited my friends, and I invited them to invite their friends and their clients. I think within 6 weeks, that group grew to about 100,000 people, and it grew to about 400,000 people. But that was community supporting community. I only invited probably 200 people to start with, but then
Mm.
other people saw that that could actually really make a difference. Amy, who had the alpaca farm, was making alpaca flowers, and, sold more on that platform that week than what their sheep made at market, because they're
Wow.
selling sheep because they're in drought. And all of a sudden she's got a platform where she can make money rather than trying to get people to her website herself. And the community supporting her. So then she invites her friends, and they invite their friends. And all of a sudden, you have this really big community that, to date has put about $10 million back into the
Wow.
regional economy of Australia. but I only started it. I was the person who set the rules and set the boundaries and threw people out for being rude and mean. But
Mm,
everyone just got in there and supported everybody. And little did I know that the bushfires were coming. And then
yeah.
we had all the horrific floods. And then, of course, we had COVID and things just
Mhm.
kept spiraling. But that's what the community did. The community saved lives, saved businesses, saved towns just by joining this particular Facebook group and supporting, whether they spent their own money or just shared a post to their friends or to their family or invited them into the group. So the power of a community. If you've got that, I guess the goal, what is the goal of the community? But having everybody with a similar value system, we want to support the people who were struggling was the value system, no matter where you came from. And
Mm,
the community just outgrew myself, but, was a sustainable community that helped other people. Like, that's a big scale community, I get that. But then, there was people breaking off in pockets and having lunches in their town, through, "I'm throwing this luncheon in Orange, anyone around would like to come?" And so all of a sudden it started to be taken offline. Like, it's just such a beautiful thing if you can get the right community together and, let it blossom, but still with someone still needs to be at the, you know,
yeah,
at the start of that. And someone still needs to control to a certain degree because no one wants to be in the bad community.
totally. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Everyone that's listening either has a business or wants to have a business. And in their mind, they're probably thinking, what sort of communities can I start so that I can get XYZ, get
Mhm.
clients, get opportunities, get whatever it is. What can you speak to there? Because obviously we are in business and we're in the business to make money and we have goals. But obviously, the example that you just used then was a very different goal. It wasn't for
Mhm.
what you could get. How do you balance, I'm doing this and I need a return on my time with, you know,
Yeah, yeah, 100% see where you're coming from. Absolutely. So I suppose, the small example that I used earlier with email marketing, do you send emails or do you invite people to respond to those emails so that then you can start a conversation with that person? They might reply, you reply back, all of a sudden you're sort of having a conversation. They might be like, "Oh, you made such a great point. You might like to meet Tom. I'll introduce you to Tom." Like, there can be little tiny things that you can do to sort of create the community doesn't have to have a central point necessarily, but you are the central point, but it doesn't need to be a collective central point where they can see each other's faces. Like, you can do a Facebook group, absolutely, but those things are a beast. If anyone is listening
yep.
and you know, they're like, "I'd like to start a Facebook group." I'm like, "We have a really good strategy because those things are a beast." And, unless you have that good strategy to get a return on the investment, it can become a bit of a time suck trying to create a community like that. But it's, you are the connector as well, so you might be talking to this person, you're like, "Oh, you need to meet that person."
Mm,
Today I've had 2 phone calls of people recycling fabrics and things like that, and one's doing something in the AI space and one's doing something of actually collecting them. I'm like, "You 2 need to speak to each other." So they're both part of my community. I'll connect them and then they'll go off and have their little conversations and hopefully do amazing things together.
mm, I love that. Let's talk about free marketing strategies because this is definitely your wheelhouse. You've been doing this for like 20 years, I think you said.
Yeah, yeah, kind of, here and there.
I mean, the community building is, I think, an awesome free marketing strategy. What sort of ideas have you got outside of building communities to be able to essentially get your message out there more?
I suppose great question and a really thought-provoking question as well, but I think one of the ones that comes to mind quite quickly is collaborations and partnerships.
Mm.
potentially finding like who has your audience but isn't your competition. Like that is one of the fastest way to grow your business is to find someone who talks to the same audience as you do, but they're not actually your competition, and think about how you could create a collaboration with them. Whether that's a collaboration like Nike and Tiffany who create a shoe, or whether that's a collaboration of let's go live on Instagram together, twice this month, once on my platform and then once on yours so that we get in front of each other's audiences. It could be something as simple as that. I think that is a really good way of doing it. And, again, I had a client just this week who was like, but I've only got like 500 followers on Instagram. If I want to talk to the person who's got 11,000, like, what have I got for them? I'm just new. I'm starting out. They've got all these years of experience and have built this audience. And so I said to her, well, okay, what did you do before this? You're a startup. So what did you do? And she says, oh, I have a full-time job of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so, okay, what are the transferable skills there that business might need? And we kind of discussed it. And then she goes, actually, my husband's a photographer and a videographer. I'm like, there you go. You could offer them something, some free photography or some editing of their videos or something like that. Like it is sort of thinking about those skills that just aren't what you're doing now in that business that you want promotion to. But we all have, we've all had a really big journey to get to where we are and probably
Yeah.
have other skills as such that we could use. So I think, go and find someone, but don't just think about the skills you've got to offer in the business you're doing right now. What else have you got to offer? Because it does have to be a 50-50 thing. There has to be something in it for them and something in it for you. So I think that's a really good one.
Collaborations, I think, are my most favorite
Yeah.
way to grow a business. I've
Yes.
grown every single business that I've had through collaborations because they don't
Mhm.
cost anything.
No, they can't. They can or they don't have to. Absolutely.
I was just about to say they can, but generally, and what's beautiful about this is it's coming off the back of that, building community that you were talking about.
Yes.
It's like
Mhm.
always thinking, who can I introduce someone to? And you never know what's going to happen, like a reciprocal invitation as well. But yeah, I really, really love collaborations. You were talking about the Instagram collaboration, and this doesn't relate directly to that particular client because I have no idea who they are. But I know a lot of people say to me, oh, well, how do I get on that big platform, whether it's podcasting, whether it's Instagram, whether it's whatever it is. And yes, you might be able to do it, but also think long term with collaboration. Maybe that's not the right person to collaborate with now. Maybe there's another few collaborations that you need to do with people that are more at your level that will get you to that collaboration. So I think that with collaborations, you do really need to think long term.
And I think you have to really understand the goal. Like again with this client, and she was talking about someone who had phenomenal business, phenomenal growth. And realistically, I'm like, okay, so you go live on their platform, you get 1,000 inquiries. What do you do? And she's like, oh, I couldn't handle that many. I'm like, absolutely, you couldn't handle that many. So you might sort of look at someone a bit smaller that might bring in
Mhm.
10 leads to your business that you can handle because you are a startup. So it's
Mhm.
kind of looking at the goal and not overstretching yourself as well, because the last thing you want is to overpromise and underdeliver. You would
Yes.
much rather have the leads come in slower at the start or, at a speed that you can handle. Like I often giggle at the messages you get on LinkedIn and Instagram, would you like 500 leads a week? And I'm like, I would be in the corner rocking if you gave me 500 leads in a week. Like, I couldn't even handle that. Like, know your target audience, mate. Come to me and say, would you like 10? And we'll have a discussion. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I really, really like the way that you mentioned that too. Really understand what your goal is. That's so important. The wording that I use is you don't want to burn an opportunity because you might think this is such an amazing opportunity now, but you might not be able to deal with it properly. But
Mhm.
once you've got some systems in place or some funnels in place, or you've got a bigger list or more followers or whatever it is, then you'll get a much better return and it'll be a much better collaboration down the track. So you
Yeah.
don't have to take every opportunity right now.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is just so such a good thing to sort of hone in on when we're talking about this. But yes, I do love a collaboration. I think they just can grow your business. And like you said, you've done it over and over again successfully. So I'm sure you are a much bigger expert to talk about that subject than me.
Oh
But
gosh, no. As we were talking about before I hit record, and I'll just say it, I'm always building the plane on the way down. Like I'm making shit up every single day. What are some of the ways that you've reached out to collaborate with people, or some of the ways that you've seen clients reach out to do collaborations with people? Because one of the things that a lot of people say to me is like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to reach out or what to do.
Yeah, I suppose you can take it all the way back to the beginning and say, if there is a brand that you're looking at that you would like to collaborate with, I would highly recommend that you follow them on socials, that you start being social on social, give them some thumbs up, some love hearts, some comments, share their content. I call it my Hansel and Gretel strategy. Just sprinkle those breadcrumbs so that when they get that email or that DM that lands in their inbox, they're already got the head nod. They're all like, I've seen this brand around. Yeah, okay, let me read more," rather than you are just someone brand new that they've never heard of. I think, if you can warm them up a little bit, give them a bit of social love, because who doesn't want that at the end of the
Mhm.
day? I think that's a really good way to start. But depending on the size of the collaboration, it could be just a DM, it could be a voice message or a video message through Instagram DMs or LinkedIn. A little bit harder to do through Messenger and WhatsApp, of course, but the other two platforms do sort of lend themselves to doing something a little bit more personal. It could be an email, could be a phone call, it could be an in-person visit. Depends on who the person is that you're trying to do. But I think the main thing to go in with is this isn't just about you. Like,
Mhm.
I'm sure, Samantha, you probably like my inbox and you get a lot of people asking to come on your podcast,
Mhm.
and they start off with, "Guess how good I am. I've done
Yep.
this for so many years and I've won all these awards and I've done," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I couldn't give two hoots. What are you going to do for my audience? What are you going to do for
Yes.
my community? Because I've spent a lot of time building my community or getting my audience." So start off there. What's in it for them? Like, it's the age old marketing question. What's in it for me? And then we can have a bit of a chat if I think that I
Totally.
want that thing. So even though it is about you, it can't be about you. It needs to be
Yes.
about them or the outcome for their clients or their
Yes.
customers.
Totally. And I think that segues beautifully into where you were going to go before, which is PR, and which has a very similar sort of but talk to us about PR.
Yeah, PR and free marketing, so getting into media is a really good, again, I would say it's a bit longer burn time, depending on what your product or your service is. Sometimes, if your product's a candle and you're marketing your candle and 300 people want a candle, it could work quite quickly, but sometimes it can be a bit of a slower burn. For me, it definitely sits more in the brand awareness strategy. Just, again, it's a bit breadcrumby, putting it out there, getting people to know, like, and trust you, sort of recognize your face, your brand, whatever that looks like. But, I often say to people, have you ever sat at your desk to do a social media post and you're like, I don't know what to post? Well, imagine having an online blog or an online newspaper or something that is produced daily, like a morning show or a TV show, and you have to fill content every single day. That is what those people are up against. They need content. They need people that have great stories, great products, a little bit innovative, or just someone who has a really good story to fill that spot for them. So I think flicking that switch to I need them to they need you because
Mhm.
they've got to fill the spots is a really good way of thinking about PR. And I think it also makes you a little bit more comfortable to reach out thinking, well, actually, I've got a good story and they probably need me to fill a spot somewhere in the next week or whatever that looks like.
Totally. Now, this is something that I've had 3 conversations with people over the last 24
Ooh.
hours, so I really wanna touch on this because it is about reaching out to those people, but, like, bringing in everything you've already mentioned about it's not about you. It's really important with PR, and I'd love you to speak into this way more. it's still about them. Even though they need you, they don't want you to be pitching, hey, you need me because I've got a really good book that you need to talk about. Can you talk a little bit about the pitching process? I mean, not how to do it, but how to get a really good pitch.
Yeah, I think, it's about story selling. Storytelling,
Mm,
story selling, it's the story they're interested in. Yes, at the end, I guess if it's TV, it's a little bit different because you've got that facial recognition to the brand and things like that. But, if it's the written word, it's really at the end you get to put like maybe 2 lines if you're lucky, to contact you and your website address or something like that. So it is about the story you have to tell. And I suppose one of the things I, talk to my clients about is if they wanted to sort of investigate this path a little bit, is to go to Google, type in the keywords, about your business or about the story you would like to tell, click the news tab and see what journalists are actually writing about something that's similar. Read a few things and start to get a bit of a feel of what sort of angles have been done, what sort of angles are interestingly enough to get printed or to get online, and sort of just start doing a little bit of research there. Because again, it's not about you. Yes, it is about you and your story, but it's not about you selling.
mm,
That's why I say it's a bit more around the brand awareness and, a longer lead time, but still, those backlinks on your website look really good as
mhm.
featured in, gives you a lot of content to repurpose over and over again that you were featured. It's a longer strategy, but it also has those other things that can really help you from an SEO point of view. If people Google you, there's more than your website and your socials coming up. There's these
Mm.
other things that you've been featured in.
I think going back to something else you said as well, in it's always think about what it is that they want, because I do know of someone that was on a morning show sometime in the last couple of months with a brand new app that had not even been launched, and she wound the story so well around who it was that in the day that they were on the morning show, they had a new lead every 4 minutes for the entire day.
Whoa, that's amazing.
So good, huh? Like, I was just like, I did
Yes.
what you did. I was like, "Whoa, that is so cool." But the
Yeah.
story was so cleverly put together with, how is this important to the other person? It
Mhm.
blew me away when I heard that. I was like, "That is
Yeah.
so good." But that wasn't
Yeah.
just a flippant, like, there was a lot of thought behind that, and it was very
Yeah.
cleverly done. But, yeah, it
Yeah,
is
and like
possible.
yes, it is possible. And, I don't want to overcomplicate it either. Like, they're the experts. They will help you, do this. If they're going to put you on their platform, they also want a good result for their reader or their watcher. So, they will help you as well if they choose you. But I had the complete opposite. Just a couple of days ago, there was someone on there talking about rare minerals, and deals that were being done. And, I quite like to have a little bit of a flutter on the stock exchange, and I was
Uh-huh.
quite interested in his company. I don't know what that company was. They
Oh,
mentioned it once, it didn't come back up on the screen. I've been and had a look on their website, and I can't quite seem to catch who that was.
oh,
And,
no.
so now it's kind of like, that was a bit of a missed opportunity. It was an opportunity to talk about, yes, what is actually happening in, governments and, some deals that are being done on the table, but I was like, "Oh," and I guess from a marketing point of view, that's how I look at things. I'm like, "Oh, you missed the mark on that one." Like, yeah, it was kind of like that was a good story for them, but I don't know if it had the outcome for the person who fronted up on morning television.
Ouch. So, I'd love to talk about one more free marketing strategy, 'cause it's collaborations, love, PR, love. What's something else that people can really tap into? Not just to get leads, but really what we're talking about is actually building authority and trust.
Yeah, I think that we have to probably have a discussion about Google and having that authority and that trust on Google so that when I put in my question or my keywords, you are up there with the answer, whether that's in AI overview these days or whether
Mhm.
that is your website coming up, whether that is your Google business profile that is up to date, that is helping you because most of your SEO needs to be local because you tend to serve as more locals. You're not really an international business or whatever that looks like for you. And I suppose in the last couple of days, and I am no SEO expert, but I think Google gets ignored too much, whereas
Yeah.
Google's kind of like a warm lead. They're looking for your business to solve their problem as opposed to social media conversation. But in the last couple of days, we've heard a lot more about Bing and Bing places, and people making sure they've got Bing places set up because we've learnt that a lot of AI programs are finding it cheaper to make deals with Bing to bring data through than to make deals with Google to pull data through.
I had
So
not heard that.
yeah, so if you haven't got your Bing places set up, and you can actually connect the two, so if you make a change on one, it will come through to Bing. But yes, it's like, oh my goodness, and Meta, if you scroll down the very bottom of a Meta search, Bing is the label, that the icon that you see. So they're bringing data through Bing. And it's not a big thing because we put things on the internet. We don't put things on Google as such.
Mhm.
But Google My Business is Google's platform
Mhm.
and Bing Places is Bing's platform. So, again, it's a little bit interesting to sort of, if you want to come up in searches, and AI searches are becoming, we want to now show up in ChatGPT. Maybe we need to look at, making sure we have our Bing profile out there as well.
Wow, there you go. I've learnt something new today. I'd forgotten Bing even existed.
Yeah, I kind of had a bit of a heart palpitation. It was probably a good 12 months ago now when I saw that Meta and Bing were potentially hopping in bed together. And I was like, that is huge. If they're pulling
Mm.
data through Bing rather than Google, which totally makes sense. Like Meta
Yep.
wants to compete with Google, it doesn't want to
Yeah.
give Google traffic. Yeah. So that's where I thought, oh, Bing's going to be a bit of a play. I don't think it'll ever outrun Google. I think ChatGPT is Google's biggest threat at the moment. But,
I would
you know,
say so.
yeah,
It's,
it'll
it
probably change next week. I'll be wrong by the time this goes
Oh, look,
live,
probably
probably.
in like 30 minutes, like with the speed that everything's going right now. But yeah, it's amazing how many people are using ChatGPT over Google. I'm certainly not Googling as much as I used to. Sometimes I still
Mhm.
do, but definitely not as much.
Yeah. Yeah. So where are you going for your searches? Are you going to like the chat, or are you going to
Chat,
socials, or
YouTube, or
yeah, interesting.
Google. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And again,
Mm.
it changes because I might see something on TikTok and just go, "Oh, that's right. I was searching for that before," and I'll actually just stay within that platform if that's top of mind. So, I don't think that I'm the kind of person that does the same thing all the time. I For me, it's just wherever I am, that's generally kind of where I am for that second. I'm like one of these squirrels with a little, like, the shiny object.
But I think AI has given that to us, right? Because once upon a time you were on Instagram, and if you wanted to know something, you had to go to Google that, because Instagram, unless that was their keyword or the hashtag they used or in their profile, like that wouldn't work for you, whereas now it will. So they're changing our habits as well.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we are just
totally.
like sheep and we kind of just move with the trends.
Yeah, totally. You've got a podcast, Small Business Made Simple. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so small business made simple. It's what it says in the box.
Mm.
I that is one of my biggest goals in my business, is to make small business simple for people. There's a lot of marketing out there that can be a little bit complicated. So myself and experts that I have come on the podcast, it's just all about making it a little bit simpler, bite size, step by step sort of stuff. So yeah, if you're a podcast listener, which you are because you're listening to this one, come over there and have a bit of a listen.
Love it. Jen, thanks so much for coming on the show today and talking about all sorts. We went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I guess if I was looking at an overarching theme, it would definitely be around how many marketing revenue streams or platforms there are that we don't actually need to pay for. And just with a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, we can actually move some big mountains with our businesses. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I guess the caveat in it all is that nothing is for free. Your time, whatever you
Mhm.
charge yourself out at, whether it's $45 an hour or $300 an hour, that's how much free marketing is actually costing you. So yes, the strategy might be free, but it's not actually free marketing because your time is definitely worth money. So you need to be very conscious about that as well. But this has been a blast. Thanks so much for having me.
Love it. Thanks, Jen.